Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. In today's video I want to talk about this. You guys have asked a lot of questions about my side-by-side, so I want to address that and talk about why I changed from Polaris to Honda. So we'll jump right into that, and we won't make this a long video. So I know a lot of you have been wondering, hey Troy, why did you get rid of your Polaris side-by-side and end up getting a Honda? The Polaris was fairly new, correct? Yes, the Polaris was a 2016, I believe, actually. Yeah, my truck's a 15, this is a 16. Yeah, the Polaris was a 16, and I ended up trading it off for this Honda Pioneer. And the reason why, and I'm not endorsed by either. I'm definitely not endorsed by Polaris. I'm not endorsed by Honda. There's no sponsorship dollars here. This was straight out of pocket for me. But quite frankly, the Polaris was really disappointing for me. So prior to having the Polaris, I had a Honda Foreman 400 four-wheeler, just a standard ATV. Used that constantly. Really loved that machine. I bought it brand new when I bought the property, so it was going on 18 years old. The thing was, I think I put a new starter on it. That's the only thing I had to do, other than batteries and oil changes, of course. The thing was pretty much bulletproof. But what I discovered is with my four-wheeler, I had that basket on the back that I could put things in. And as I got more and more involved with pigs, I was putting more and more weight in the back of that and going up these hills to different places. Realized that was pretty dangerous. I was in the process of flipping over. I was going to have some issues there. So I knew, okay, I have to upgrade. If I'm going to keep doing pigs and keep moving all this feed around on these hills, I need to have something a little more stable. So about 2.5 years ago, I sold my Foreman to my dad. He wanted it. And I went down to the local Polaris dealer because everybody had said, you got to buy Polaris. Polaris makes the best side-by-side. They're great. Yeah, the belts, you heard issues about the belts. No, don't worry about that. Just buy the side-by-side from Polaris. It's a great machine. So I bought it, and I got the 900 power steering, one of the biggest ones they had at the time. Really wanted something with some power, so I knew I wouldn't have any issues around here. And I really liked the machine starting off. I used it every day, and really thought it was going to work out well. But I noticed as the weeks and months went along, there's all these little issues that started popping up. So these issues that started popping up with the Polaris, in all fairness, I can't pin all of them on Polaris International. Some of them were specific to my local dealer. The first thing, when I had the Polaris, my first trip out of the garage down to the barn to do some things, I noticed it squeaked crazy. I mean, just made a horrible squeaking sound. It wasn't engine, it wasn't suspension, it was something about the chassis that just squeaked. It sounded like two pieces of metal rubbing together. And I couldn't figure it out. It took me a couple days to try to isolate it, and I'm putting black tape around some of these things that I think are rubbing, or trying to stuff some rubber in between some things to keep it from squeaking, because it sounded like it was coming from the roll bar. And it took me about a week. I just happened to be walking around this side of the side-by-side at one point, and not much different than the Honda. The roll bar is bolted on here at the windshield struts, at the base of the windshield posts. And when the dealers get these, of course, they're all broken down, the wheels are off, the roll bar's off. Is how they ship them, and the dealers have to put them together. And I discovered that this thing was barely even tight. The alum screws were almost getting ready to fall out of it. So I was like, oh wow, that's the issue. So tighten that down. That took care of that squeaky sound. So fast forward about a month, and I'm taking the side-by-side, the Polaris, back to the back of the property to where we're building our retreat, and I was pulling my small utility trailer. Well, the side-by-side started to overheat. It overheated so much that it actually shut down. It has a safety feature on it that shut down. So I'm in the back of the property, side-by-side won't start, really ticked off. I'm like, man, this thing's not even 6 months old and it's overheating like this. So waited for it to cool down, got it back to the garage here at the house, started working on it, trying to figure it out. And thanks to the glory of YouTube, it's the only way I could figure it out. YouTube, people had talked about thermostats and those type of things. And of course, man, brand new side-by-side, I hate for those type of things to be going out. But one video talked about bleeding the coolant system. And I'm no mechanical whiz, but I've worked on things from time to time and can usually service my own stuff, but I had never heard about bleeding the coolant system. We're bleeding the brakes, all that type of stuff, but not the coolant system. Long story short, followed the steps on the video, and man, that thing burped some serious air and never had an overheating problem after that. So again, I pinned that one on the dealership. They probably put the fluids in it didn't bleed the coolant system prior to me taking the machine out of the dealer. So what really disappointed me and started really turning me off to Polaris was I had 250 miles on the side-by-side, on the Polaris side-by-side, and my son, when he was going down to do his chores, he noticed that the front end was making some noise. He said, "Dad, the steering's kind of weird." So I drove it. I actually kind of blew it off, thought, what does 11-year-old know? But he was exactly right. Started going through it. The rack and pinion steering completely came apart. The rack and pinion steering box, the worm gear in there, it just disintegrated. I mean, it was just absolute dust. And I was just disgusted. I was like, man, I cannot believe that. Again, getting on the internet, looking around, read a lot of people complaining about the OEM rack and pinion steering on the Polaris, always an issue. So I was like, wow, that's not good. So I actually ordered an aftermarket, a heavier duty one, swapped that out. So that was an expense. That was about $400 to do all that swap out. Shortly after that, again, on the Polaris, I keep pointing to the Honda, but obviously I don't have the Polaris, my right CV boot split. So I had to replace that. Again, that was probably only maybe 700 miles on it. And I don't take these things muddy. I don't go ripping through the woods at high speeds doing that kind of stuff. It literally goes from here to the barn and into the woods for firewood and those type of things. I use it as a work vehicle. So I had to put a new CV boot on that. That was a real pain. So the final issue, and what really pushed me over the edge to say it's time to get rid of this piece of junk, was the demand drive started going out. When I would put it in four-wheel drive, it would make a horrible noise, start popping. So I started getting in there, looking at it, and I could see it was actually coming apart. Inside, again, didn't take it apart, but I could definitely see some signs, some of the debris from where that was actually falling apart. So a replacement OEM demand drive was going to be about $900 just for the parts. If I had somebody do it, then it was going to be much more expensive than that. So at that point I said, enough's enough. It's time to get rid of it. And looking at side-by-sides, my first option, what I really wanted to consider going to was maybe the Kubota RTV diesel. But when I started pricing it, I was like, man, I can't justify that expense yet. The farm's just not making enough money to justify that expense. That would really require me to take stuff out of my other business and savings and all that kind of crap to do that. So looking at the next best thing, again, I had such great luck with that Foreman. My dad still has that Foreman 400, uses it all the time, and he's had to do a little bit of carb work to it. So that's now 19, almost 20-year-old four-wheeler. So going back to Honda, the Honda is a shaft drive where the Polaris was belt driven. This is a 2018, and the Pioneer actually didn't come out, as my understanding, didn't come out until 2016. So when I was buying my Polaris, this thing had just come out. Before that, they had the Big Red, which wasn't very big and sometimes was a red, but it wasn't really that convincing. I think Honda realized they were really behind the game when it came to ATVs side-by-side, so they came out with the Pioneer in 16. So got this 18 Pioneer. Yes, it was a lot more money. Yes, I spent a lot more. If you add up all the money I have tied up in side-by-sides right now, I really don't even want to think about it. It kind of just aggravates me. But been really happy with this so far. It's been had it for about 2.5 months. I did get an extended warranty on this. I went ahead and spent the extra money. I got a 6-year warranty on this, bumper to bumper basically. So really happy with that. I'm hoping I don't have to use it, but if I do, then it's covered. So far, I love it. It's a 1000 cc, so it has just as much power, if not a little bit more, than the Polaris. Like I said, it's shaft drive. It has real gears in it. So I do like that in fact, on these hills, the Polaris belt drive, as I'm going down the hill sometimes, they always say it'll hold you back, and it would, but sometimes it would freewheel. It'd go wee, wee, and really jerk you back and forth. You guys can play that sound back if you want. But it really just keep jerking you back and forth, and sometimes you would rev up so much, and that belt would try to slow you down, that the rear end would try to come around on me if I had a trailer behind me or any of that extra weight. Honda's much smoother there. Obviously, one other feature the Honda has and Polaris didn't was doors. Now, obviously, that's not going to keep the cold weather out, but a little more safe. I do find it annoying at times though when I'm in the barn and I have to get out. I have to open a door, and sometimes the wall's too tight. Getting back to the transmission, this Honda, this version of the Pioneer has these paddle shifters. Now again, I'm not ripping through the woods, so not a big deal for me, but I like the ability, the fact that I can go from automatic transmission to manual transmission, where I can actually use these paddle shifters to gear up and gear down. So again, coming down a steep hill with a load in the back, if I really want to gear down, then I can, if I have that in manual transmission, I can paddle shift that down and it will hold. It's been impressive how well it holds in place there. Very similar as far as the drivetrain goes to the Polaris, except for it has one extra setting. The Polaris had what they called turf mode, which is basically one-wheel drive, one of the rear wheels to keep you from tearing up your grass, standard two-wheel, and then a four-wheel. Well, the Honda has the same thing, turf, two-wheel, four-wheel, but also has four-wheel with locking differential. So that's true, all four wheels grabbing and biting. Haven't had to use that yet, but I'm sure it'll come in handy on this mud pit sometimes. So all in all, again, I haven't had the Honda very long, so I can't say it was a slam dunk. It was a great investment. I did great. I made out like a bandit. Not gonna say that. I will say when I took my Polaris, the Honda dealer that I got this from was a Polaris dealer as well, and I told him all the issues that I had with my Polaris. I wasn't trying to sell somebody a piece of junk. Obviously, that affected my trade-in. But it was kind of interesting, as I walked through the service department of this Honda Polaris dealer, I noticed that not a single side-by-side in the service department was a Honda. All the things in service were Polaris, and there were Polarises that were gutted. They were completely taken apart being serviced. So it was kind of interesting to see that. To me, that was a bit of a tell. But the one chink in the armor I did have is, for those of you who watch the channel, with the Polaris side-by-side, I had a Super ATV 5-foot long plow, really nice plow to keep the driveway clear in the wintertime. And it has a proprietary mounting plate to the plow to the side-by-side that you have. So I had a specific Polaris mounting plate that the plow would attach to. Well, it was unique to that Polaris, of course, so I didn't mess with taking it off. I kept the plow, but I didn't keep the mounting plate. Well, so I get this thing home right after Thanksgiving. I call Super ATV to say, hey, I need the adapter plate for a Honda now to fit my plow that I bought from you guys 2 years ago. And they said, oh yeah, sure, those are back ordered until July of 2019. I said, well, we don't get a lot of snow in July of 2019. We get a lot of snow now. So there's no way I can order this adapter. Nope, we're sold out for the year. We don't remanufacture until spring, and they don't come in until July. So I've been on the internet, I've been trying to find the adapter plate for a Pioneer for my Super ATV plow, to no luck. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. My son keeps doing snow dances because he wants a bunch of snow, and I keep trying to negate his snow dances because I have no way to clear the driveway this winter. I've got my tractor, but that's not nearly as exciting or fun. But that's the one chink in the armor I have right now, is I'll be able to plow in July. So hopefully we'll get a July snowstorm. That way you can justify that expense. So for those of you that asked why I swapped side-by-sides, I hope that answers your questions. Again, in full disclosure, my experience with Polaris may not be your experience with Polaris. I'm not going to say the entire line is junk. I'm just going to let you know, letting you know what issues I had in my experience there. Hopefully the Honda will serve me better. The Polaris maybe is more recreational based, couldn't handle the work. Maybe that plow made that front end come out. I don't know. Those are things that we can obviously armchair quarterback. But hopefully we'll see if the Honda holds up better, and I'll keep updates on it. If it falls apart too, then I'll definitely let everybody know through video. All right, take care, everybody.
That is awesome.